are zooming straight down into Skagway, Alaska. Our plan was to hike up the Chilkoot Trail into the Canadian side, crossing over Route 2 and hiking back along the White Pass Railway. At this point in October, the train wasn't running, so the tracks were free. In summer, you don't want to try this route because you'll get run right off the tracks. The Chilkoot Trail follows the river up the valley, and at the time John and I were hiking, it was a complete deluge. It was tropical-style rainstorm the entire way up. After 3 days of hiking in torrential downpours, our equipment, our clothing, boots, everything was drenched.
At this point in the trip, when things were getting colder, snow was starting to fall, I thought, I'm going to warm up. So I started digging through my bag, and I realized that in my confidence, I forgot the waterproof shells to my gloves, and I forgot my wool cap. I had no hat at all for staying warm. The only thing I had was a rain jacket that had a really thin hood, and that was it. That's all I could do to protect my head. My gloves, without the waterproof shells, were pretty much useless when they get wet. That was a bad sign, and probably a more reasonable person would say, you know what, this has not been a great trip so far. I'm going to try and go back, but that's not what we did. We thought, you know what, maybe it's going to get better. Maybe it's going to stop raining, stop snowing the next day, and things will be fine. The next section we got to was called the Golden Staircase, and it was an extremely steep slope, super rugged, lots of boulders, really difficult terrain, especially in slushy snow, and it took a while to climb. Once we got to the top, that was basically Canada, so they were breathing fresh, cold Canadian air. It was snowing, it was much colder, the air was crisp. It was all boulder fields, patches of snow were everywhere, and there were these really deep ponds, turquoise water. Some of them you couldn't see the bottom, and it just went down, I don't know, it could have been 100 feet deep. It's hard to say how deep these things were. After 8 miles of hiking, we reached Happy Camp. There was no location to put a tent. The only place we could really stay at comfortably was inside the Happy Camp shelter, which was kind of a small cabin. The door wouldn't close, so the door was always ajar, and that was because the floor was buckled. Our stuff was wet, so we moved our clothing, we hung it up to dry, poured hot water, made some hot water with the stove, poured it into a bottle, put the lid on, threw that into the bottom of my sleeping bag. And that was kind of luxurious. We had some nice, had some nice heat coming up around my feet, and I fell asleep. After a couple hours of sleeping, I woke up, and inexplicably, the lid had popped off my bottle, and all of the warm water that was once in there was all over my sleeping bag, and soaked the whole bottom area of my feet. It was getting really cold that night, and I had a really hard time sleeping because my feet were cold, and I also had cold wind and snow blowing in through the door over top of my face. So I woke up the next day, I was cold, a little bit miserable, and I looked over, and there was a snowdrift that had built up overnight inside the warm-up shelter. And it looked like a lot of snow. It was about a foot deep. My clothing was frozen solid. It was hanging up, and each piece was just like a plank of wood. I looked outside, and it looked to be about 8, maybe 10 inches of snow on the ground. A little bit concerning because first of all, I didn't have any snowshoes. Secondly, my boots were frozen solid as well. And there are times when storms up there can drop several feet of snow in a day. The option was to basically evacuate where we were at, return and down climb the Golden Stairs, which were now covered in snow, and probably the most dangerous part of the whole entire trip. As we were talking it over, I was trying to prepare my clothes to wear that day. I first took them and started beating them off the side of the walls to knock the ice off. And basically the ice had permeated through the fabric of the clothing. So I was able to get the outside ice off, but the ice is pretty much embedded into the fabric itself. So I loosened up my pants, loosened up my shirt, my thermals, everything. Tried to break up the ice as much as I could from my boots, and I put everything on. It was a shock because it was super cold, but it was actually worse because once I warmed up a little bit, the remaining ice that was in that fabric melted, and now it was instantly soaked again, but with ice water. We loaded up the backpacks, began hiking back down the Chilkoot Trail, but after just 2 miles of hiking, I was completely miserable. I had my down jacket on, which the down was completely matted, not being frozen flat. and I could not get that down to reinflate right. On top of that, I had snow piling up on my head, melting, and I had this ice crust on my hair. So it was very, very cold. I had basically brain freeze. I'm shivering, I'm shaking. I'm just absolutely miserable. My legs are so tired I can barely move them. I'm just absolutely exhausted. John was ahead, and I was too tired to even yell out to him. I took my backpack off and just laid down in the snow. The snow felt warm. Not that it was insulating, but it felt warm like an electric blanket, radiated of heat coming out of that snow. That's the impression I had. It felt really good. I'm laying there and I'm starting to go in kind of a dream state. Just kind of spacing out in the snow and happy as can be. I didn't feel miserable anymore. I didn't feel cold. I felt warm and toasty. And that is completely opposite of the way I should have felt. It was frigid up there, wet, and miserably cold. I was basically in the first stages of hypothermia. And lucky for me, my friend John came back and he started yelling at me to get back up again, to start hiking. And I didn't feel like I had any opinion on the matter. I just enjoyed laying down there. But for some reason, I kind of involuntarily stood up, got my backpack, put it on, and just started marching behind my buddy. Didn't really have a thought or a care in the world at that point. I was completely miserable once we started hiking again. I think my body heated up enough that my misery came back. I started shaking and shivering like crazy. My legs became super, super hard to move. I was very, very exhausted and tired. And I remember having almost a tunnel vision. I didn't really have any thoughts in my head. I was just basically mindlessly following the guy in front of me. And that basically went on for 2 miles until we got to the top of Chilkoot Pass. We decided to go into the warm-up shelter. At least it was out of the wind. I had a really hard time taking off my jacket. I couldn't move my fingers at all at that point. So I clamped my wrists together just to get the zipper pulled. And it took me, I don't know, it felt like 10 minutes to finally get my jacket open. I fumbled around in my backpack trying to get out some food to eat. Dropped a lot of the food on the ground because I couldn't move my fingers. It was just very, very awkward and frustrating. And I remember being really afraid that I had frostbite because I couldn't move my fingers, but that was just a symptom of hypothermia at the time. When we were discussing what to do next, I had a really hard time talking. I was slurring my speech, and it was hard for me to come up with the right words to say in sentences. So I was kind of bad off, and I think my buddy John knew it and knew that we had to get down to a lower elevation where it was warm. It was time to go, so I put my stuff back on. He helped me buckle up my backpack and everything, and out we went back out into the snow. As we're going down the golden stairs, the boulders are huge, they're hard to walk around, we're tripping and stumbling, covered in slushy snow. The first bad thing that happened to me was my boot laces broke, so they just snapped. So now my boots are just flopping around on my feet. I'm already clumsy because I'm hypothermic, so I'm tripping and falling and sliding, and I'm catching myself, which is a good thing. And then my hip belt snapped off from my backpack, so they completely separated. So my backpack was shifting and turning in all kinds of weird ways as I'm stumbling and falling down. I did eventually make it down the stairs, down that steepest part of the ridge line coming off of Chilkoot Pass. We had steam just rolling off of us at that point. I had warmed up quite a bit on that difficult descent down into the bowl. The snow eventually turned to rain. It was a cold rain, but it felt so much warmer than it was up in the Alpine area. Came to the Sheep Camp Ranger Station, which was a log cabin. Got up onto the porch. We were trying to get in. It was locked. There's no way to jimmy the door open. We thought we were just going to spend the night there, but that wasn't happening. I took everything off, just standing there in my underwear, and I felt so much warmer. All that nasty cold stopped off of me. And steam was just pouring off, and we stayed there. I ate lunch. I could actually move my fingers then. It was a much better situation to be in. Got a little energy, and we decided we're just going to completely hike out. We'll hike the whole way back to a car and basically spend the night in a campground in town. We hiked out 10 miles, but only made it to the Canyon City log cabin, and that's where we decided to call it quits. We went inside, shut the door, and took off our wet clothing, strung it up, and we realized there's no way this stuff's going to dry overnight. My sleeping bag was still wet from the incidents during the water the night before, so we realized we needed a fire. So we looked around the cabin, found an old makeshift plywood shelf, and that was completely dry wood. So we took that, we broke it apart, put it in the pot-bellied stove, and first time on that trip we had to do it. By the time we woke up the next day, our clothing was dry, we had a good night's sleep, and we were actually warm.